Welcome to the live stream of the first ever Super AMA being put on by our aliens, our experiencers, our high strangeness, our UFOB, and our UFOs. I'm your host for this event, Kelly Chase. Most of you probably know me as the host of the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast. I'm also an executive producer on the upcoming docuseries Cosmosis, UFOs in a New Reality that's dropping on Apple TV on December 30th. Today, we have three incredible guests with us, and we're going to be diving deep and asking your questions about James Fox's phenomenal new documentary, The Program. I hope by now that you've all seen it. And if you haven't, I'm confident that after hearing from our guests today, you're going to want to fix that as quickly as possible. Friday movie night. To get the most out of our time with our guests, we'll be dividing this live stream into three parts. In the first hour, we'll be focusing on questions for Kirk McConnell. In the second hour, we'll be hearing from Lenval Logan. And we'll end with the man of the hour, director James Fox. But all three guests are welcome to contribute throughout. I'm going to do a quick introduction for all three of our guests, and then we'll dive into it. James Fox is an acclaimed documentary filmmaker renowned for his groundbreaking work on UFOs and the unexplained. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Fox has become a leading voice in the field of UFO investigation, known for his meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and ability to gain access to high-profile witnesses and experts. His acclaimed films, including Out of the Blue, I Know What I Saw, The Phenomenon, and Moment of Contact, have garnered widespread praise for their balanced approach to a controversial subject and have been invaluable in advancing public awareness around the UAP topic. Kirk McConnell is a seasoned professional with 37 years of experience as a staff member in various U.S. congressional committees, including the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, and the House Intelligence Committee. In these roles, he has developed expertise in areas such as joint all-domain command and control, electronic protection, quantum computing, personnel security reform, and insider threat monitoring. From 2017 to 2024, he researched UAPs and attended multiple classified briefings between senators and numerous government and contractor sources, giving him surprising insight into the reality of the UFO phenomenon. Lenval Logan, originally from the United Kingdom, served over 20 years in the United States Air Force, where he contributed to various high-level initiatives. After his military career, he worked as a government contractor for over 15 years, supporting programs including the Department of Defense's UAP task force. His expertise spans intelligence, advanced technologies and analysis, with a focus on national security and unexplained aerial phenomena. Logan is also a co-founder of Phenom, a platform for studying and reporting anomalous activities. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the intro.
Likewise.
Same here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, let's just dive into it. We have so many questions that people sent in from all the various subreddits. Let's start with our first hour. We'll be focusing on questions for Kirk McConnell. So Kirk, I did a little intro for you, but can you give us a little idea, sort of like your background? How do you end up in a position where you're in these meetings with these committees and various contractors?
Well, as you noted, Kelly, I spent 37 years on the Hill. I retired this past February, but when I retired, I was serving on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and we ended up getting involved. The staff did in investigating the UAP phenomenon. And it just sort of grew. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but that's the essence of it. I spent a long time on the Hill. I'm a congressional institutionalist, if you will. I believe in the role of Congress and the role of congressional oversight, and that's where my perspective comes from on this topic.
So based on, these meetings that you've been in, the insiders that you've had the opportunity to speak to, do you believe that the phenomenon is real? And if so,
well, I, you know, I believe that really, if you step back, there's a mountain of evidence out there. Now, I recognize that the mountain of evidence that I'm referring to is also intermixed with a lot of hoaxes and misinformation and so on. But I just believe that any open-minded person that really digs into all the vast UAP literature will see that there's just too many incredible incidents and sightings by credible people, along with, in the modern era, sensor detections, photography and radar. And that's in addition to the published claims of many over the decades that they have had inside information about the existence of secret government UAP related programs. I think Senator Rubio said it best when he observed that either the executive branch is hiding crash recoveries and reverse engineering activities that have been going on for decades, or we are giving clearances and responsible jobs to numerous people who are, delusional frauds or who like to ruin their own lives for coming forward and making such claims. And either way, we have a problem. I would also add that we have a large number of experiencers reporting direct contact with and certainly numerous abductions by NHI. This community, unfortunately, is still disrespected and ignored largely by the scientific community and society at large. I believe this is probably going to turn out to be a historic mistake, the same way that it was a tremendous mistake not to listen to victims of clerical sexual abuse or the sexual abuse at the heart of the Me Too movement. So I will say that this combination of data sources and testimony is what has finally convinced me that this phenomenon is absolutely real.
Amazing. So, in your opinion, is this something that the US government, it sounds like this must be something that the US government also thinks is real. Are they surprised by that? Are you surprised by that they think that this is real?
Well, yeah, I do believe, I cannot prove, but I certainly do believe that the United States government understands that this phenomenon is real. First of all, we have extensive, Congress that is, has extensive firsthand and secondhand reporting, and credible historical documentation and testimony indicate to me that the answer is yes. Also, I would say this. If the United States government isn't aware and tracking this to the same degree that most of us are, I'd be shocked and ashamed of the government. I believe that the United States government, especially when it comes to national security, is quite alert, and they don't pull punches, and that they get deadly serious when there's indications of a significant national security threat. I believe that the United States government would have investigated this matter very seriously. For example, we have a tendency to date the beginning of the UFO UAP era, to 1947 with Roswell and with the flying saucer reports of 1947. But I think we really need to go back to World War II, if not before. And that I date the government's awareness and seriousness about this to that era, World War II, if not before. I'm talking about the Foo Fighters that people understand was a real phenomenon during the Second World War. But if you read the literature about Foo Fighters, you will quickly recognize, for those of us who are students of the UFO phenomenon, is that the descriptions of these so-called Foo Fighters is exactly the same as what modern witnesses observe today and describe today. These things were all over the European and Pacific theaters. The US and our allied intelligence services were absolutely paranoid during the war about the ingenuity of German scientists and engineers. we were constantly in an anxious state of anxiousness about what secret new wonder weapon were the Germans going to come up with. And I will tell you, if you read the literature, when these Foo Fighters erupted onto the bomber runs in the Second World War in Europe, there was a lot of worry that this was some German superweapon. And the Allied intelligence services were worried about this, and they assigned serious people to track this. It's really interesting to note in this respect that one of the main scientists who was involved in that effort in the Second World War was Howard Robertson. Another figure was Luis Alvarez, who was a subsequent Nobel laureate. They were in Europe studying the Foo Fighter phenomenon. And of course, Howard Robertson emerges again in 1953, heading up the CIA's Robertson panel that came out to advise about how to combat public and academic interest in UFOs. So I think that the government does know, and it's been following this for a very, very long time.
That's incredible. And it raises the question, if they are taking this so seriously, does the US government have a hidden crash retrieval and reverse engineering program?
Yes, I first would state that, yeah, I believe that they do have both of those things and have pursued this for a long time. Do I have confidence about how much progress they've made? Do I know how many crashes have been recovered? Do I have any idea about the status of reverse engineering efforts? Have they actually achieved alien reproduction vehicles, or figured out exactly what the technology is behind the UAP phenomenon? No, but we have certainly had credible sources claiming firsthand knowledge and/or involvement to tell senators in my presence that the United States government has had crash recovery programs and reverse engineering efforts, as well as complementary intelligence and counterintelligence activities and operations for decades. There's many others over the last 70 years who have said the same things in various other forums. They've either published books or they've gone to the press or what have you. In the modern times, in the last several years, we've had people actually coming in to talk to Congress. Would the United States government have been convinced of the reality of UAPs and tried to unlock the physics of them just based on the observation of their behaviors, though? Never mind if they'd recovered a crashed vehicle or not. And as I had formerly stated, I think the answer is yes. I think if they had observed the way we've all observed the behavior of these craft, they would have said there's something serious and significant here, and we have to get to the bottom of it. However, if there was even one crash, if the Roswell event actually happened and the government got its hands on something, I think the answer is so obviously that they would have been all over this and had a reverse engineering program. They would have said, hey, if one of them crashed, maybe there's going to be others. We need to be prepared for that. We need to be ready to go pick them up, including if they happen to crash outside the United States. So I just think it's logical, right, to expect that the responsible government like ours would have taken those actions. Moreover, once you believe, once the government sort of believed that this was real, they certainly would have established aggressive intelligence programs to find out what this phenomenon is all about, as well as understanding what our adversaries and even some of our partners and allies around the world might know about it. And they would have started counterintelligence programs to protect our knowledge of this and our reverse engineering efforts. So to me, data and logic indicate to me that this is the United States government has been doing this for some time.
Yeah, fascinating. One more question before we turn it over to questions from our Redditors. So it sounds like the government has been working on this for decades, but why do you think it is that the United States government has decided to approach it with such extreme secrecy? Why did they think that was necessary, and how has that secrecy been maintained?
Well, this is speculation on my part, because we really don't have sources who have given us accounts of this. Certainly back at the beginning when it all started, but if we date the era of the UAP interest and activities on the part of the United States government to the mid, to late 40s, you just have to think back. Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, the panic that ensued from that happened in 1938. That's like yesterday. If you go back to the late 40s and early 50s, it was not a distant memory. I think, in addition, you have to consider that the Manhattan Project, by the time we get to the late 40s, it was evident that the Soviet Union had in fact penetrated the Manhattan Project. Espionage activities had been successful. They had knowledge of the Manhattan Project before we ever lit off the bomb. So that had to have been a painful, searing lesson for the United States government about what it takes to really protect a really important matter. I also believe that certainly even more so than now, there was a presumption that disclosure of such a momentous discovery as this would have led to a kind of, you name it, demoralization of the population, a crisis of faith within the world's great religions. And at a time when the world was just recovering from the Great Depression, from this existential struggle with fascism and Nazism in the Second World War, and we were, of course, at the beginning of the Cold War, another long, drawn-out existential battle with totalitarianism. So, these are powerful motivations for the government to hush this up and protect it. I will also say that when the government establishes a special access program, something very important that they adopt extraordinary security measures to protect, they also they also really get serious about security. They mount vigorous counterintelligence efforts to protect it. They will resort to disinformation, compartmentation, and total denial. These are standard practices. And in addition, I've seen it firsthand over the course of my career that when the Department of Defense and the intelligence community create a special access program, part of the way that they protect that is that they will suppress, to the best they can, research and development by people who are not part of that special access program into the physics or the mechanics of whatever it is that they're trying to protect. And this extends even to research on what the Soviet Union or Russia might be doing or what China might be doing. This is part of the approach to protecting the phenomenon. So another concern that might be animating this is that what if it should turn out at the end of the day that the basic physics involved in UAP, the magical propulsion, the speed, the instant acceleration, the G forces they withstand, and so on. What if it is not that that hard to understand or exploit? I recognize that this is a real stretch because we're all amazed by the sophistication and advanced nature of these craft. But what if once you know it, that it's not that hard to understand? And what if it should turn out that these same technologies, these same scientific breakthroughs, can enable weapons of war that have horrible implications? And what if the calculation is that, dictators like Kim Jong-un, if they understood the physics behind this, could create weapons of mass destruction? This could even be an explanation, in my view, for why, even if the government has made significant strides in developing this technology or replicating this technology, that has probably clear economic benefits for the aerospace industry and telecommunications and the like, that they might have felt like, well, it's too risky. It's too risky to disclose this. So that's the litany of explanations that I can come up with to account for the government's determined secrecy about this issue.
Oh, those are all really great points. Thank you so much for that thoughtful answer. We are now going to turn it over to questions from our Redditors. If there's any questions that you don't have an answer to or that you don't feel comfortable, you can always skip. And also, you always have the option to toss the hot potato to James or Logan and see if they want to take a shot at it. So let's start with our first question. All right. This question comes to us from Shiitake Barbecue in the R Alien subreddit. If there is an NHI disclosure attempt, is there or should an NHI greeting committee be formed that is comprised of non-military, non-government agencies, but mostly reputable international citizens to be a transparent channel for communications with NHI? Thank you.
Well, I've not personally even attempted to ponder questions like this because I think it really cannot be answered until we know what the government knows. We have really no idea the extent to which, if any, the government has made contact. We certainly hear reports and assertions about it, but I don't think, well, certainly speaking for myself as a congressional staff member, I don't have any confident understanding about this. And we don't know what the government has been able to achieve. Is there more than one NHI species that we are aware of? Certainly, we've heard reports that there are multiple NHI species, but I think questions like this need to wait until this matter is further disclosed.
Great point. That makes a lot of sense. All right, up next, we have a question from Mantis Awakening in the R Experiencer subreddit. Many people report personal contact with various forms of non-human intelligence as part of the experiencer phenomenon. Based on conversations with insiders, my understanding is that the government takes this seriously, but is very hesitant to acknowledge it publicly. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, Kelly, I just don't feel that I can comment on this with any real authority. It is, of course, consistently claimed that NHI communicate telepathically and over great distances. It is also well known that the government has extensively experimented with, things like remote viewing, and for decades pursued research into mind control. We're all, familiar with this. It's interesting that this research started in the 1950s. Might this research have been linked or based on what the government discovered about NHI communications? I do think that it is a logical inference to conclude this. It's also often rumored that indigenous peoples have much higher propensity for nonverbal communications with NHI. And there are, of course, rumors that the United States government has actually targeted such population groups for recruitment. But I have no inside knowledge about this one way or the other.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for your answer. Up next, we have a question from Toxic Toy from the R High Strangeness subreddit. David Grusch has stated, quote, "There is a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the US populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral," end quote. Did you find evidence of this campaign in your investigations? And if so, does it extend to social media, including Reddit, today?
Well, the evidence, this is an evidence question. I don't know what constitutes evidence. I think it's a tricky matter. I mean, certainly much has been written and said alleging this over a long period of time that has made its way into the public sphere, and privately credible sources have reported this same allegation to Congress. And some of this are credible sources that the government has conducted exactly these kinds of operations. I do not know for sure the answer to this. I think that we can't rule it out. I think when it comes to something that the government thinks is a core national security secret, that I don't have trouble imagining that this is correct.
Absolutely. Do you have, this is just a follow-up question from me, for people who are concerned about disinformation on social media or on Reddit, what do you think are some of the better sources that people can look to for information about the phenomenon that's reliable?
I think that disinformation, misinformation can pop up in all kinds of places. At the same time, I think that credible, true, accurate, historically accurate stuff can also turn up in lots of different places. Credible people with stories to tell have a hard time getting a platform that will allow them to publish their beliefs and their information unless they publicly identify themselves, for instance. And this can lead even the most credible sources to resort to secondary and tertiary types of outlets to post their message. So, I really think that the answer to this question is that you just have to educate yourself. You have to read as much as you can and develop a sense of what you can, think is credible or not, and see what everybody else thinks about it. At the same time, I think, you just also have to accept that there's going to be a great deal of uncertainty around this topic until the day when there is disclosure and there is real congressional oversight and the news media really gets after it and so on to get a really accurate, detailed picture to emerge.
Great advice. Thank you. We'll go on to our next question From AWM19 Delta on our UFOB subreddit. What should the average citizen be doing to prepare for the impact of disclosure?
Listen, I just would say I truly do not know the average citizen to prepare for the impact of disclosure. I mean, I'm tempted to say, go buy yourself an igloo in Alaska or something. But I mean, I don't know. I truly don't. I haven't. I've had enough trouble over the last 7 years getting my head wrapped around the reality of this. Never mind, thinking about how I prepare for disclosure and the impact, the various types of impacts it could have. So I have nothing to advise people on.
Well, I'll still be looking at igloos on Zillow after this, just in case. So, um, we can move on to our next question. This one comes from Quantum Earwax in our UFOs. As far as you know, is the Intelligence Community Inspector General or the Department of Justice currently conducting an investigation into David Grusch's UAP crash retrieval claims? And how many members of Congress are privy to the 11 hours of classified testimony that Grusch provided HPSCI and SSCI with before going public? Have attempts been made to make it available to other members of Congress?
Well, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage with respect to this question. I would say, first of all, I'm unaware of any ongoing intelligence community inspector general or Department of Justice investigations into Dave Grusch's claims or complaints at this point. And I do not know how many members of Congress in both chambers have accessed and listened to the testimony that Dave provided. And this is mostly because, as far as I know, only the members and staff of the two intelligence committees, one in the House, one in the Senate, have had access to his testimony. And I was not serving on either committee during the in the period since Dave provided that testimony. Whistleblower complaints in the area of national security. There's very strict. Congress handles these things with kid gloves. The last thing that Congress wants is to be accused of political meddling in any IG investigation, and especially for whistleblower complaints. And as a consequence, when whistleblower complaints arise, Congress just backs off and lets the Inspector General process run its course. And so it's a little different for the intelligence committees. They have been sponsors of a lot of whistleblower legislation, and they get access. But the armed services committees do not really. So I'm mostly in the dark on the answer to that question.
A quick follow-up question. In terms of just the conversations that you have had with various Congress people, what are their opinions on David Grusch's testimony? Are they frustrated that they haven't been able to hear more from him?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have not personally, by any means, asked any senator about their personal opinions about this. So I can't answer the question with respect to what senators think. Any senators? I do think that there's bound to be some disappointment that the mass of senators have not been able to see specifically what he has asserted. But that's logic and speculation on my part.
That makes sense. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next Redditor question. This one comes from SodomXW. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from our aliens. Given the allowance of the impingement of restricted airspace, has this government been reassured that these entities are of no threat whatsoever? It seems that must be the case. Could the idea be that they are of such advancement that our physically bound defense mechanisms are as meaningless to them as dandelion fluff on a breeze, and they have no intention or need to hurt us?
Well, once again, I sound like a broken record, but I really don't think I have a foundation or a basis to answer this question. My uninformed assumption is that NHI that can get here from from very far away across the universe, that they have technological superiority, and that would afford them the ability to go where they please without much, if any, risk at all. With respect to whether the United States government is quote allowing this, I have no idea. Yeah, maybe we have no choice but to allow it. Who knows? I think there are some observers who would suggest that 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 we haven't been invaded, we haven't been blown up, despite the fact that there's been a lot of UAP visitations. That maybe the United States government has gained confidence that they do not present a mortal threat to mankind or to the United States, and therefore is sort of like has a degree of equanimity about these visitations. We just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to speculate, though. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can move on to our next Redditor question. This one is coming to us from the thread you follow on our experiencers. Are NHI capable of producing zero-point energy? And if so, could that be the reason for the truth embargo?
Yeah, well, 0-point energy. I have sort of thought about that. I have some notes about it. I think, I can't find that, but let me just say that I'm not a scientist. I don't even, wouldn't even pretend to play one. But I certainly do my best as a layman to follow the science about this. And, I, like so many interested observers, put great faith in the theories of and work of Dr. Harold Putoff and Dr. Eric Davis, to name just two, but they're certainly prominent. And I think that they clearly are of the belief that this is the best candidate for explaining how UAP craft are able to traverse the cosmos. Tapping into the 0-point energy field. And engineer and thereby finding ways to engineer the space-time metric is what it could enable theoretically, the necessary means, faster than light travel, anti-gravity, huge energy sources for propulsion, and so on. So yeah, I think it's a reasonable conclusion that the 0-point energy field, or the physical vacuum, or the quantum vacuum, whatever you want to call it, there are many terms, is likely where the physics of this lie. Yeah.
Real quick, because I think that James has a question for you.
Very quick question. Thanks so much, Kirk. I'm thoroughly enjoying listening to you. Um, I, without violating any security clearances or classified details, could you put us in the room with a firsthand witness and describe what it felt like and what the expressions of other potential senators that may have been there, again, no names, what it was like to listen from a potentially firsthand witness? Can you put us in the room and tell us what the atmosphere felt like?
Well, James, I don't think in a way that it's very hard to imagine. It's certainly I speak to myself. What was going through my mind is shock and kind of reeling. It's a tough thing to get your mind around, and to be confronted with it. Coming from another person whom you find credible based on their credentials and their clearances and their background and all that. It certainly it makes it hard to go to sleep at night. Um, for a good while.
What did the senators, did they have a sort of slack-jawed appearance as well, or was it just
uh, no, I mean, I don't think any of us fell on the floor, in anguish or anything, but it was very serious and very sobering, and there was, just rapt attention to what was being said and trying to absorb it. But yeah, they would take this information on board.
did you get the impression that these individuals were scared?
Well, it varied. Certainly, in some instances, I mean, some people, there was real fear. Yes, there was real anxiety about speaking out what they had to say. Yeah,
For their
it was very
careers?
disturbing to them. Yeah.
Very disturbing to them, yeah, okay. So in other words, they believed that there would be dire consequences, or that there could be dire consequences for sharing this information? Is that sort of the impression you got?
Certainly, there was no mistaking that. They made that perfectly clear what they felt like the stakes were for them. But I also think that there was an element of for them of having it just cross their lips in a setting like that. To say what they had to say. It was sort of momentous for them, I think, as well. So in a way, I think it was if anything harder for them to be saying these things than it was for us to hear it, maybe.
It's like a weight off their shoulders almost.
Um, Sure, James. I think there was an element of that. Yeah, I would say that there almost certainly was an element of that. I haven't really thought about that before, but now that you mention it, yeah, I would say yeah.
And when you came home and saw your friends and family, do you feel like you couldn't, obviously you can't, was it a burden for you?
Yeah, it's a burden for me. In some ways it feels kind of lonely, and it makes you really wonder what the future holds. It is. It is also the case that, like, as I'm talking to the people at this attending this event, there's a lot that I feel and have always felt can be shared about it in broad terms, and the like. And believe me, when I first started talking to my wife about this, it was, it was like I was watching her eyes carefully to see just how crazy she thought I was, uh, and and so. And I will say that, I could see flashes going across her mind is like, oh my God, after all these years, did I really marry the guy from A Beautiful Mind, Uh, so yeah, it's, I mean, I'm sure everybody who has come to accept the reality of this has been through a similar experience. Um, it's like, holy God.
Yeah. Yeah, but so you kind of came to that conclusion on the inside, and I kind of came to that conclusion on the outside, right? So my field investigations is what led me to believe David Grusch was telling the truth, not just because David Grusch testified under oath to a bipartisan group of lawmakers, but it aligned with my research in the field.
James, I get that, and certainly there is a difference, but it's not fundamentally different. Um, you know, so much of, I mean, would I have believed these people if that was the only source of information about this? I think the answer is it would have been much more difficult to push the I believe button if not for this mountain of external evidence, which is the stuff that you have waded through yourself and produced some of it, right? There's just so much out there to consider, to evaluate, to weigh, and to factor that into, how you respond when someone is telling you face to face that they have inside knowledge of this. I mean, after all, there have been books written by people claiming the same thing, right? Claiming inside direct firsthand knowledge, right? I mean, Philip Corso, there's lots of them out there, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm relating is just, a handful of modern face-to-face revelations, but there have been others that you have researched yourself.
I'll shut up now. go back to the Reddit question, but I just had to get that one because I was so curious.
Well, thank you for those questions, James. Fantastic questions. Why you're so good at what you do. And Kirk, thank you for sharing all of that with us. We are ready for our next question. Give me 1 second because I lost my screen in the middle of all that. Okay, here we go. This question comes from Zentigrate 108 from R High Strangeness. What have insiders said about how to overcome the legal issues blocking disclosure, specifically regarding Hal Puthoff's comments in the program?
Well, I'm not terribly comfortable addressing this question. It is. I'm not a lawyer, and anyone listening or subsequently reading any transcript about this should always consult a lawyer themselves if it's pertinent to their plans or circumstances. But it is my personal view, and I absolutely stress that this is a personal opinion, that people with knowledge of what the government knows and has been doing can share their information with congressional committees, with individual members of Congress, with little to no risk of being held legally liable for violating their security oaths and non-disclosure agreements. I do know lawyers and some lawyers who have been thinking about this question advise that there are no cases that they are aware of where the government has even tried to do this. So my sense is that a source wishing to report inappropriate or unlawful activity to Congress need not be deterred from reporting such information to a relevant committee of jurisdiction, just because, or even if that committee is not officially cleared to receive that information. I mean, if you think about it, otherwise Congress would be in an impossible bind. If the executive branch is hiding a program or activity or information from Congress, and they're saying to their employees, you can't tell Congress about this, or you're going to get, or you'll get prosecuted. How in the world is Congress ever supposed to uncover this? Unlawful, from congressional perspective, unlawful activities. Furthermore, I think the United States government itself is in a bit of a bind here. After all, the government says this is all baloney. We don't have any such crash recovery or reverse engineering program. We are as in the dark about UFO, UAP as the general public. Well, how can they then turn around and try to prosecute someone for claiming that that's not true? It's a very tricky situation for them, right? Like, yeah, Congress, none of this is real, but we're going to prosecute this person for telling you that it is real. Yeah, let's. I'm fundamentally asking the question, can you take legal action against someone for informing Congress about programs that officially do not exist? I think that to prosecute someone, they would have to admit that the reporting is accurate. And if they do that, then Congress is going to say, wait, what? You're going to then prosecute somebody for telling us that you've been lying to us for decades or withholding this information? So look, I think that if I were a person in the shoes of a Hal Puthoff or anyone else, you bet I'm going to be concerned about the legal repercussions of me coming forward, even if I do it in private. That I ask Congress not to out me. That's a serious thing to ponder. But I also think that you're probably going to be okay if you choose to do that. And I also will emphasize that I think that it is really important that people do this. I don't think. We may get disclosure through the executive branch. Who knows? Maybe Donald Trump is going to decide to be the disclosure president. But if not, if it's up to Congress to push through this, Congress is going to have to hear from more credible sources with firsthand involvement. And I think that they've been good so far as I know, about protecting the identity of these people who have come forward. And I trust that they will continue to do that. So I think it's a risk, but I think it can be navigated.
You don't need to answer this question if you're uncomfortable, but do you think that it's possible that whistleblowers are hesitant to come forward because of repercussions that could be extra legal or outside of that legal framework?
Well, there is certainly a belief amongst amongst the inside, the population of insiders, that this is the case, and it's very sobering thought to consider. I would just say that there are reasons to believe that a lot of this is of the classification and security system around this issue is handled under the Atomic Energy Act of 1947, 1954, and under, I believe, under these laws, we did execute the Rosenbergs for treason. And I think that if you go back and read what people have said over the years, is that when they're required to sign these non-disclosure agreements, there have been some pretty harsh threats made to them. I think if you read the history about the government's when the government sort of swooped into Roswell to try to manage that situation in 1947, all those witnesses that finally spoke up in the later in the 90s. Well, later decades, I can't remember exactly when, but routinely they would say that they were told, like, your bones are going to be scattered in the desert, right? You and your family, kind of thing. So I can believe that the government has put the fear of God into people about this. Yeah, I believe that.
It's sobering to think about. Thank you for sharing that. We are coming up to the top of our hour. Time flies when you're talking about UFOs. I just wanted to ask before we let you go, we move on, we get you out of the hot seat. What do you hope that people take away from the program? I think a lot of people who are watching right now are really invested in disclosure, in hoping that, we're able to move the ball down the field in a meaningful way. Like, do you think that disclosure has any chance of coming from the US government? The UAPDA looked like it could be our best shot on paper, but what is it going to take for us to really make this happen? And what can we as a community do to support those efforts?
Well, Kelly, in talking to you and the folks who are putting this event on, it's my understanding that you're hoping to reach millions of people. Millions of people who weigh in with their with their representatives and senators, is a powerful thing. And I think there's strength in those kinds of numbers. Is it what can we hope for? Is to just keep pressuring, keep pushing, and getting yourselves organized. What is it going to take? I don't know. I'd said 2 years ago that it seemed like momentum was was heading in the upward direction, and we were making a lot of progress. And I think that the government was maybe thinking that it had a real problem on its hands. More recently, you noted the UAP Disclosure Act didn't get even through the Senate this year. Maybe there's we're on a sort of the momentum is swinging a bit the other way. Is it the case that Congress, if we get another half dozen credible firsthand sources to come forward, is that going to give Congress the confidence and assurance that there's something on the other side of a full investigation, a really hard-hitting investigation? Maybe that will do it. Maybe we'll get a disclosure president. Maybe an NHI craft is going to land on the White House lawn. Who knows? So I don't have a crystal ball here.
Well, thank you so much for that answer. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I know that you haven't done really any interviews like this, and we're honored that you chose to join us. So thank you so much. All right. So we are going to do a little transition. Up next, we will be talking to Lenval Logan. But in between, I wanted to share two quick clips from the program. So we'll let those roll now.
My name is Kirk McConnell. I believe this is the first time I've ever been on camera. I recently retired from government service after 37 years working as a staff member for various committees in Congress. They have or have had very high-level security clearances. They appear to be rational and believable. We have individuals, people, who have asserted not only that there have been crashes, but there have been crash retrievals, and that there is a crash retrieval effort that has spanned a significant period of time since the end of the Second World War. And so it does deserve to be looked at seriously and not dismissed.
So the government has done itself a disservice because the government really started lying to us. Hi, my name is Lenval Logan. I'm a retired Air Force intelligence analyst that started off as a B-52 crew chief and cross-trained. I had the opportunity to support the UAP task force.
It's frustrating when I hear mainstream scientific community on all the talk shows criticizing the lack of more compelling data when I know it exists.
There's enough evidence out there that demands a verdict that says, yes, there's something going on. With the right people working together, I think we could come up with a definitive answer, and the answer is yes.
All right. If you haven't seen the program yet, you need to. Obviously, it's very exciting. And we are very excited now to speak with Logan from the UAP Task Force. Logan, welcome to the live stream.
How you doing?
Great, great. It's so wonderful. I'm having the time of my life. You kidding me? So I'd love to start with a question just to give people a little bit better of an idea of who you are. What are you able to share with us about your role within the UAP Task Force?
It was probably one of the best assignment. It is the best assignment I had. I had the director of the task force was probably the best non-boss I've ever had, because he pretty much told us, lean forward, go find out what's out there. If you have any problems, bring it back to me and we'll figure it out. So I pretty much knew, I could go this far left, this far right, but stick to the project and let's get some questions answered, and then bring it back. So we had lots of data to go through, and like you said, there's a lot of fakes out there. People that are providing. I think there's even an app now that you can fake a UFO sighting. So we had a lot of data to go through, and then there's the testimonies to go through, and the other side of it is that a lot of the people that we talked to they were confused as to why are we talking about this now, especially people in the military. They're like, we don't talk about this. And I was like, hey, there's a process now for you to talk about this. And I remember a couple of guys like, we don't believe you. And then they came back later and were like, we want to know more. And I was like, well, do you have something to say? And they're like, yes, but no, we'll talk to you, but we won't put anything down on paper. And we'll take a wait and see approach to see how this all works out. So I'll kind of leave it at that.
That makes a lot of sense given our earlier discussion with Kirk. The UAP task force is kind of in this long lineage of various programs that have been charged with investigating the UFO phenomenon dating all the way back to Project Blue Book. But we've also heard from various programs over the decades from people and insiders from those programs that they weren't always given the access to information or the resources that they needed to really do those jobs. Do you feel, in your opinion, that the UAP task force has been given what it needs to really do the job?
I can say, in my humble opinion, no. I do know that our boss was working a lot of things in the background in anticipation of what we might need and might go after. But I don't think that as much knowledge as he even had, I don't think he fully got all the things that he needed in order to get the full access to what was going on.
Is it hard to know what it is that you need? Like, are there enough unknown unknowns that it's even hard to know what to ask for, or do you have a really clear idea from within the program what you would need to really do the job fully?
As an individual coming into the program, I think it would be hard for you to know what to ask for. But again, the leadership, they were kind of leaning forward to kind of anticipate what they thought we needed. And they would update us and we would get briefings and we would talk. But at the end of the day, me, myself, I don't think I knew what I was going to be getting myself into. I was excited, don't get me wrong. I'm very excited to go track this stuff down, but I just don't think I fully understood what I was getting into.
I can imagine. Do you believe that there's a way to share more of the information about UAPs that's been collected by the UAP task force with the public without seriously compromising national security? And if so, what would it take for that to happen?
I have to say I really don't know. There's some data out there that is unclassified and I think it could be shared, but or at least it's FOUO for official use only, something along those lines. But at the end of the day, um, for them to release the data that we have, it might create more confusion, or it might sit there and go, "Hey, all right, we've got this, but now what do we do with this?" Because anything that the task force gives out, there is too much speculation on where it came from, how did we get this, what are we really seeing, and I think it creates a lot of confusion. I think the idea was gather as much information as we could, make sense of it, then present it, and then that way we could explain to people the left and the right, and hey, this is what we got. But I don't think that took place as much as we wanted it to.
That makes sense. In the program and in that great clip that we just saw, you basically said that if you got the right people working together, that they would be able to come up with a definitive answer about the origin of the phenomenon. Can you talk about what skill sets you think might be needed to make that kind of a determination?
Well, initially I just thought academia, historians, anthropologists, imagery analysts, um, you name it, even psychologists. This has to be something that's a joint effort. I'm an intel analyst, all right, but there's only so far I can go, all right. Now we need people like Ryan Graves and Commander Fravor and Commander Dietrich and other people to weigh in and say, okay, we saw this, it did this, and now here's what we got. Then the intel analysts take it and then they do their thing. But at the end of the day, you got to have some really good outliers that you can put in front of academia so that after academia has looked at it, it's something that we can hand to Congress or whoever the right people are to say, this is what we got. And I think if you have enough people and the right people using the right tools, not everything, it's not the government. I don't think you need the government to do this. I think you need the public to solve this problem, or at least collect enough data so that you can put it in front of the right people to get a definitive answer of, yes, there's something else going on here.
That's a great point. I know that we're seeing over the last few years the emergence of more of these academic organizations like the Galileo Project and the Soul Foundation that are focused on kind of bringing a more academic, multidisciplinary approach to this topic. Are you seeing a willingness within the Department of Defense, and within the UAP task force to work with those organizations, or do you think that we still have a ways to go before they're really, willing to work with them in that way?
Well, the UAP task force is no longer there. It's now run by Arrow, which I think is a little different. However, I think that there's a ways to go with a lot of these different organizations between Soul, between SCU down in Huntsville, There's groups overseas, because this is a worldwide problem. NHIR in Australia, they're looking into it. There's groups in Europe. I think each one of those groups needs to engage with their government POC to see where they can do the most, where they can assist. Because it's, the governments themselves, they may have limited monetary resources, but they don't have eyes everywhere. Okay, the people do. And I think a lot of things have been lost because people haven't spoken up because of the stigma. I still bump into people today that have, oh my God, I got to tell you all this. And I'm like, hold on. Did you call Newfork? Did you call MUFON? Did you get this documented officially? And they're like putting their head down in shame, like, no. And I was like, I don't mind you telling me because I need to get this data, but I need you to get it officially documented so that once it's in some type of documentation, somebody else that sees that same information goes, hey, I was around then. I saw that. And now they can add to the story as to what this thing is. And one of the things I do want to add is that one of the things I was constantly doing was trying to compare what the public population was seeing to what we had in the military. And the reason why that was important was because when the military is doing something, usually it's by happenstance that we catch said object, whatever. All right. And we may see it for a moment in time. We may see it for an extended period of time. And we may characterize everything. But the general populace, they're probably going to see it as well from a totally different point of view and see something totally unusual that the military did not capture. Okay? And so it's that whole of effect approach that we need to be able to sit there and say, we know if it's a triangle, it does X, Y, Z, does this, does that, whatever. But if it's this, it does these other things, and have a whole approach instead of trying to engage on something where we only have part of the information.
Great answer. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to kick it over to James, who has a question for you.
Hey, thanks so much, Logan. So great to hear you talk here. One of the in my humble opinion, best photographs of a UAP ever taken was the Calvine 1990, referred commonly as the Calvine incident, the Calvine UFO or UAP. And I thank you to David Clark and former RAF press officer Craig Lindsay, really, and Nick Pope, stuck my teeth into that case. And when I was sharing some of the details with you, you kind of blew my mind as to being potentially a witness. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yes. So in January 1990, I was assigned to go to my first intel unit overseas, going to Europe. And the exercise that normally would take place back then, anybody in the military that's been in since the 80s and the 90s would know the term reforger. Stands for return of forces back to Germany, because we always thought we were going to fight in the Fulda Gap against Russian forces. And what was funny was on the flight over to Rhine-Main, the base that was open at the time, we were between Iceland and Scotland, and I was eating on a Philadelphia cheesesteak. If nobody's been to Philly, go get a cheesesteak, by the way. Anyway, we were coming down and the sun was just coming up, and me and the guy that was sitting next to me were eating, and I looked out of the window and there was a diamond-shaped object zigzagging in the clouds. And I was like, what is that? And the guy's like, yeah, what is that? And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, hey, I'm going to my first intel assignment. Oh my God, this is probably some super secret, cool, what do you know? I'm going to find out about it. So I kind of played it off. This thing disappeared in the clouds and we landed. And I asked my bosses at the time, hey, what's out there that does all the zigzaggy stuff. Everybody looked at me like I was an idiot. So I found out years later, shortly after, I had NATO AWACS show up where I was at. They said, "Hey, what are you doing with the Americans? You're from England. You should come fly with us." So I was like, "Sure." So I took that as the opportunity to ask the question, "What's out there that's doing all the weird zigzaggy stuff?" And they were like, "You know," and I was like, "No, I don't know." And so they showed me this tape, and they said, I saw something whiz right through the air traffic of all the aircraft that were flying around. And I said, "What was that?" They said, "That was your SR-71. And I said, "Oh, then that's not it." And then they pulled out something else, and they showed something zigzagging just like I saw it in the clouds over between Iceland and Scotland. And I was like, "Yeah, that guy." And they said, "We don't know who he is. We always thought you guys knew who he is. We always just assumed it was you Americans playing with us." So, long story short, to fill in the rest of what James is saying, this was also at the tail end of the Belgian wave, which I didn't know anything about. But after I did the interview with James, James was throwing something at me, and he showed me the Calvine picture, and it was the exact same thing that I saw. And I was like, "What is that?" Because I had never heard of this Calvine picture. And he's like, "Dude, it was the same year. I think it was in August. You saw your thing in January." I was like, the only difference I saw was the object that I saw was kind of going between black and white. And in the picture that I saw, it looked kind of whitish, but it was the exact same thing. And I was like, okay, this just kind of adds to the picture that there's definitely something going on, because I didn't even know about this thing. And James kind of shocked me with that one.
So let me ask you, when you say AWACS, so they picked it up on radar?
Yes.
So they picked it up on radar. How many sets of eyeballs on it?
On the screen, there was a bunch of guys in the back that all saw it. But I was asking the question, like, "Who is this guy?" They said, "Dude, he said, we vectored aircraft towards it, and as soon as the aircraft get close, it zips off somewhere else and whatever." And I was like, "Who else knows about this?" And they're like, "Everybody." I said, "Everybody in your squadron?" He goes, "Yeah, we all know about it." And I was like, "Okay, if you say so." So it was just one of those notes that you kind of put down and put in the back of your head, and just kind of, okay, someone verified what I saw, and it was unusual, and you kind of throw it away. But it's, again, until James popped up with this image, I was like, "Oh crap, there it is."
So you're telling me you saw, and they picked up on radar, an object that exhibited a wild technology with no wings, no visible means propulsion type of thing?
Well, you can't, on a radar, you can't see all that stuff. You just know
Okay,
it's an object
but
that
you saw
is
it with your
zipping.
eyes too.
It's just zipping around.
But you saw it with your eyes too, not just the radar, right?
What I saw, yes.
Okay.
But what they were seeing on the radar was something totally different.
Okay.
Now, I didn't correlate it to what date and all that other stuff, because I was just in shock that they had something that was zigzagging around and whatever. But what I saw outside the window was it would go into a cloud, and as fast as it was moving, you would expect it to just pop back out at the same angle, but it would come back out at a different vector. And I was like, "Dude, what is that?" And I thought I was seeing something at first, until the other guy confirmed that he was seeing it too. Because, you see all kinds of weird things out of the window sometimes, on the ground. You're not quite sure what it is. It could be a car, it could be a truck, or, some sunlight glinted off something on the ground. But in this particular case, I had confirmation beside me. And then when I talked to these guys, they confirmed that there was something out there that was zipping around, exhibiting the exact characteristics that I saw.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's really impressive. It's another little piece of the puzzle on that case, or that craft.
Anytime. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a whole bunch of questions. James, thank you for that, for pulling out that little tidbit, because that is fascinating. Um, we can head over to Redditor questions now. I know there's a bunch that were submitted. Our first one is going to come from Disirregardlessly. I love these names. From our aliens. What is the most alarming piece of NHI or UAP activity to you? What are the key fears motivating the cover up by the clandestine programs groups?
I really wouldn't know what clandestine groups and all those guys are possibly thinking. The the thing that really interests me is just the way they moved. Um, Especially some of the sizes of things that we've heard of, or some of the things that the witnesses have said. I've heard stories where they talked about a light came out of whatever it was, and they said that the light moved slowly. It wasn't an instant on. It came out slowly, like it was slowly reaching out to them, and then sometimes it stopped in front of them. And someone said it described like he thought like he was looking down a tunnel when the light came to him. So all those things kept telling me, based on my imagination, either these people are crazy or what they're talking about is actually possible, and we just haven't figured out the physics to know how to do that yet. And that's pretty much what really took me in to say, now that there was this UAP program and I was a part of it, I wanted to know more about. Because we talk about things moving at umpteen thousand miles an hour, and then it does a left-hand turn or a right angle turn or go up. I remember seeing the after the Belgian flap, the Belgian Air Force showing the video of the F-16 radar, and whatever it was trying to lock onto was moving out of the way. And I was like, are they anticipating? Are they in our comms? Are they? What is it? I mean, something they had was better than what we had. So I'm trying to think, how do you outmaneuver it? And then because of all the movies that I saw, all the science fiction movies, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if this is an alien invasion, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna figure out, how to beat them, and run back to my boss going, hey, I got it. This is what's going on. There was no such moment, but it was still very intriguing to see all this information and start seeing a thread that I could sit there. And probably the better part of it was feeling free to talk to people in front of me about all aspects of what was going on.
Wow. I think it's so fascinating to hear from people, who are insiders on this topic, that there's still so many questions about what these things are and how they work. If you do figure out how they work, you got to come back and we'll do this again.
Yes, definitely.
All right, we'll move on to our next question from a Redditor. This one is from NoWay0420 in our experiencers. What environmental hazards do UAP possess, and how can one protect themselves from it if in close contact?
That is a good question. Here's my worry. My worry is that something's going to happen. I mean, it's happened before where it's a first responder that gets there before anything else happens. And my worry is that a first responder, or what if a UFO comes down like what happened in Rwanda, okay, or Zimbabwe. What if it comes down and this thing is just giving off radiation, and now we've got a whole bunch of people that are hurt? Those are the hazards, things that we aren't expecting. There's an incident called the Cash Landrum incident. I think everybody knows what it is. Something happened in Texas, near Austin, Texas, and the mother, the grandmother, and the young boy all got some type of radiation poisoning. I'm worried that something like that could happen on a grand scale, and we're going to sit there and go, we got nothing, other than, yes, we'll get you to the hospital. And then how do you get insurance for that? Because you walk into the hospital and say, yeah, UFO gave me radiation. I don't know. So it puts us, there's a whole bunch of things here that we have not considered. And the idea is to get ahead of the problem. So if it does, because I'd like to think that, I think there was a question earlier to Kirk, that if they were to come, there'd be a program where, we go greet them and whatever. And the possibility is that they may have science like they can beat cancer and all this other cool stuff. But what if in that interaction, something really bad happens? They bring a germ, you know? Uh, now I'd like to think, or err on the side of good, that a lot of positive things are going to come from it. But we have to be prepared for both sides. And at the end of the day, as I told James, I would like to just know, I'm an intel analyst. So friend, foe, which one is it? Or in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Speaking of hazards of UAPs, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about the hitchhiker effect. Is there anything that you're able to share with us about the hitchhiker effect and what that might be, how it works, any thoughts you have?
I do not, but I know that the guys at Skinwalker Ranch and Travis, I talked to him quite a bit. Awesome guy. Um, I know that a lot of people have experienced it, and I know that there's a Dr. Jim Segala that's trying to figure it out. And if you don't know who he is, look him up, because he's trying to. I call it the woo stuff, and I tell everybody I'm black. I don't do the woo stuff, but being seriously, talking seriously, the idea is that's just another aspect of what you asked me earlier. Who are the proper people that we should be going to? Well, I don't know who's going to be monitoring and tracking the woo stuff, but now we've identified someone, Dr. Segala, who was, if I remember correctly, he was on the first season of Skinwalker Ranch. If you guys haven't seen Skinwalker Ranch, watch it. Good show. Shameless plug. Um, but the idea is we need everybody. This is we used to talk about a whole of government approach. We need a whole of not just USA approach, but maybe a world approach to use the tools that are there to help gather as much information as possible so that we can figure out what's going on.
I love that. Definitely a team sport. We'll move on to our next Redditor question. This one comes from Initial Anteater 377 from our High Strangeness. Lou Elizondo has mentioned multiple times that we don't have the luxury of time, and so disclosure must happen now. Do you know what he could mean by this? And do you know of any impending event or contact that seems to be implied by his statements? Thank you for what you were doing.
I'm guessing, Kirk, you want me to answer that?
Yes, I would prefer. Yeah.
Hot potato.
Yeah. So we have no proof of anything, but there's some people out there on Reddit and Twitter that are saying the Galactic Federation is coming back, and when they do, we're gonna have to do certain things. They're looking for us to be at a certain level of maturity, I guess. And if they don't see that, they're gonna, move on or whatever the case may be. And that might be what he's alluding to, because even though Lou and I talk quite a bit, there's usually so much to talk about that we never get all the points. And that would probably be the best answer I could give, is that supposedly if there's 4 aliens, 20, 80, whatever the number is, some kind of federation where there's a group of them is supposed to be coming back, and we're supposed to interact with them. I'm just hoping and praying that if time is running out, that either we reach the level of maturity that we're supposed to hit, and if not, if somebody knows the answer, tell us what it is so we can get there a lot quicker. And if not, I guess we'll find out.
I guess we will. All right, we'll move on to our next Redditor question. This one comes to us from Millions to Millions in our UFOB. What evidence that you came across was the most ontologically shocking?
There, there is, I'm there's nothing to me that was causing ontological shock. I think when I look at all the people that have had, that are all the people that are experiencers, okay, I listen to them as a whole and try to figure out what's the thing that's really bothering them the most. And I think it's the not understanding of what is really going on, because I think all of them seem to say, "Why me? What's so special about little me?" Then when they find out that it's not just them, they go, "Why us?" And all through that process, they don't have any answers and nobody's there to help them. So it's kind of like, brother, heal thyself. So they have to get together in these little groups and try and figure it out. And they may be right on some things, but I mean, there's this thing about Rh negative blood. There's a thing about um, the different ethnic groups that are out there and how we all deal with it differently. So I don't think there's any one thing, but I think it's kind of interesting that for me, when I see reports on different types of UAP, I'm always trying to figure out, are they all using the same type of technology to move across the distance? Or is there multiple ways to move across the distance? Are they all reaching out to the same people, or just the people that they know, they like, whatever? Those are the areas that I think about, not necessarily the big ontological shock, because I think disclosure is already here. I think someone said it's disclosure with a small d. All right. So I told someone once, and I still think it's the same answer. If you've ever played the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, all right, we're at the point now where at least one person in 6 has seen something. And for that one person, even if they don't talk about it, they already know the phenomena is real. They're not guessing. They may act coy and go, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about," but they know the phenomena is real. And all we're waiting for now is a call to arms to say, give us some answers, because we're kind of out there on our own and we need some answers to figure out what's going on. I mean, Kirk said, "Hey, go to Alaska, get that igloo," and that might not be enough. But the other side of it is, what if this is like, we used to hear that song, "The Age of Aquarius." This is the moment of enlightenment, and they come down and they're like, "Okay, we're here to show you." I've had so many people come tell me that if an alien ship stops down inside, they're like, "Let me go get my bags. I'm ready." you know. So you'll see across the gamut of things, but there's no one thing that is sticking out to me other than the fact that there are logically, if you listen to what people are saying and how they're saying it and how the government is approaching the problem, that the phenomena is real. The question is, what is it all about? And we have people like James and others trying to share the knowledge that he has acquired over a certain amount of time to say, yes, we all know that there's something here, but wait, there's more, and then go from there.
That's so cool. I think you're definitely right about the 6 degrees comparison that you made. As a UFO podcaster, I find like I take Ubers and Lyfts a lot. And, when people ask, "What do you do?" "Oh, I've got a UFO podcast." And it's crazy how many people then have, they don't know me. It's fairly anonymous. We're only going to be in this car for 15 minutes. How many people have a story to share and will just volunteer that? It's really interesting. Let's go to our next Redditor question. I think this is one that everyone who's watching has probably been waiting for us to get to. This comes from Mige EEE, sorry if I got that wrong, from our UFOs. What's your take on the drone situation happening over the US and previously over the UK? Is it a distractive play from the government? Do you think there's NHI involved in the happenings? Thank you for your time.
I personally do not know either way what it is. I have talked to people that have given me different bits of information, like, and the problem we have is that, okay, the best thing I can say is this: we have a certain amount of tools out there. Phenom, my app being one of them. There's Nanu, there's Cider, there's several apps out there. And the people that are in those areas where all this incredible stuff is happening, they're not using these tools. So the idea is, how do we get the right information to really make give an informative answer of what is really going on? You have, one lady told me in particular, and I got it verified through other people that experienced the same thing, that when one of these UASs came down low, she said it was making a helicopter sound. I was like, all right. So I said, rotors, they're all going to make different types of sound and all that other stuff. She's like, no, Miss Logan. She said, you don't understand. She said, when it came down, she said, I thought I was dealing with a helicopter, so I was looking. But she said, when a helicopter is flying close to you, from the rotors, you feel that bass that hits your chest and you know something's happening. She said, it almost sounded pre-recorded because there was no bass. I didn't feel anything. She said it was just there. And then as it came close and then as it moved away, she said, I was like, okay, but something's not right. And then she had to think about it and go, there was nothing there. If there was one thing that I could do, and I'll do a stamp, I would say those mayors, those congressmen, those assemblymen that are out there, I would say, and pass this out to your legal department as well, I would say, grab one of these tools, work with your law enforcement and whoever, and as I said in the movie, collectively we can figure out what's going on. If you don't grab a tool, you're only getting a small part of the information that is out there. We need to know exactly where you were. We need to know the angle. We need to know, are multiple people seeing it from different aspects? We need to know the acoustics, the magnetics, everything possible that we can get. And we need to get it back to smarter people than me to show that we've collected the right data. Now let's figure out what it is. Because it may be that if we get enough information, we go to Congress with the answer and say, here's what's going on, because we're doing your job for you because you didn't do it the right the first time. That's what I would probably want people to know. If you're in the area around Northeast or anywhere in the world, if you're really interested in this subject, grab the best tool out there.
Phenom, of course.
Grab a good tool and get out there and get on it and help us collect the data.
Amazing. And people can find that just in the App Store or wherever they buy apps
Yep,
for their
it's
phone?
in both the iOS App Store and the Android App Store. And let's rock and roll.
Amazing. I'm going to kick it over to James for a quick question.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask you, Logan, if you could explain to me exactly how the app works as in layman's terms. So I've got this app, right? So let's say I have your app, Phenom, and I see something up in the night sky that I'm unable to identify. So I open up the app, I point it at the object, and then does that information upload to a database for everyone to have access to? How does that work?
Okay, so along with what you just said, you've got the app, you see something unusual out there, it starts capturing the data. It uploads it to a database, but what it does initially, it will send it out to everybody and let everybody know something's just been captured. Now, there will be fakers, people that mess with it. I had one guy send me a beautiful picture of his guitar. I'm like, I don't know why you did that, but whatever floats your boat. But once the data comes back, it will come back into a central database that we will work with other people and share. Now, I don't own your image. The only thing I'm asking for is co-utilization so that when we get it and we start trying to compare it and show to like Travis Taylor and Eric Davis and company, I'm not asking everybody, mother may I, mother may I, mother may I. You get your 15 minutes of fame. We just want the data so we can help figure out what's going on. So you're contributing to the whole bigger picture. The other thing that I would like to add is that we're adding something called teams, that if you're part of a team, let's say the four of us are all interested in the same subject. The beautiful thing is that if Kirk goes outside and sees something, if he's part of the team, it will immediately send something to Kelly and James so that they can maybe get outside and see the exact same thing and catch it from a different perspective. Ultimately, whatever is captured between all of these tools, when we get the outliers, we'll pull it all together and put a case together to say, hey, Kirk, can you help us get this to the right people in Congress so that we can figure out what's going on, or we're going to tell you what's going on based on the analysis done through academia and the rest of the group. But the idea, all I would ask people is you got to participate, or else you're going to be speculating all day long.
Okay, so when you point, I'm just trying to get this right. So you got the app open, you see something, and this is so relevant right now because my phone is blowing up with messages from people all over, friends that live in New Jersey that are going, I've seen it 7 times in a row now. What am I looking at? It seems to be a SUV-sized drone, but in some cases making noise, other cases not making noise. So if you point this, it collects the data and sends it back to the database. Does it also tell you if it's something conventional with a flight path plan?
Not right now. We're working on that. But what we really want to do is we want to bring the data back. And we've got an artificial intelligence. I was just having a demo on a different artificial intelligence this morning. But we've got an artificial intelligence that we're comparing the data to. So we can sit there and go, here's all the conventional stuff that we know of. Doesn't fit this. Here's some of the weirder stuff that's out there. Doesn't fit this. And now here's your outliers. And we want to concentrate on the outliers and get it to the right people. Does that answer your question, James?
Definitely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. I just honestly needed some clarity for me. I mean, I've heard about these apps and they seem more relevant now than ever before with all these bizarre sightings taking place all over.
Right. So one of the things that I really want to do is I want to have like a guild where once we get it to academia, that's great. But I want to get like you, Kirk, Kelly, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Leslie Keene, all of you guys to review all this stuff because I want your input to make sure that once the analysis is done, there could still be errors. All right. I don't consider myself an expert. I am a collector of data that I am trying to help solve a problem because that's what I like to do, solve problems. If you guys like to solve problems, I'm asking you to join me and let's go figure this out all together.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you for explaining all that. And people can check out Phenom. It seems like a good time to do it. We'll head to our next Redditor question. This one is from ET Phone Home. These names are so great. From our aliens. Do you think the government will ever openly admit the existence of NHI in our lifetime? If so, do you think we'd get anything more than they exist and we don't know anything else?
Kirk, you want to weigh in on that one?
I feel like I've already fielded a question like that, and I don't feel like as I said, I don't got no crystal ball on this. I don't think I'm any more qualified than anyone else to answer.
Okay. The only thing I can say is, at least for the Navy videos, the government has already admitted that there's something out there. They just don't know what it is. I think President Obama said the same thing. There's something out there. I got briefed and we're trying to figure it out. That might be the best you will get for a while until we collect more data and we're able to give something definitive to say, look, you're asking about transmedium. Here's the video of it actually entering the water, and here's another video of it coming out. And hey, we got 4 videos of it entering the water. That, that would be something that Congress would be like, okay, this is definitive. We see it. If you, I mean, I've heard, oh, I saw beings come out and whatever. Well, and I caveat this, if your electronics work,
Right.
get a picture, collect the sounds, everything. All that means something to us so that we can collectively put it together and figure out what's going on. Because without the public, I'm not saying anything ill of the government, but if the government doesn't know, the only other way they're going to figure out is by you telling them. And right now, it's been word of mouth. We need evidence. And we need, my app, when people used to ask me, I said, it's for the skeptics, the believers, and the in-betweeners. Okay? Right? I keep using these quotes like, let's collaborate to graduate. Teamwork makes the dream work. All these things are trying to say, let's work together because it's the only way we're gonna figure things out. And then I want to be the first one to show up on Kirk's desk with, here you go. Let's go to the senators and go talk to them.
Well, we want you to do that too. We'll get on that. Everybody download Phenom. We will go to our next Redditor question. This one comes to us from Philosophy Isn't Dead in Our Experiencers. In Chapter 8 of his book Imminent, Mr. Elizondo describes the following exchange with a Mr. Devin Woods, which is a pseudonym. He's a senior member of the DIA, ODNI, and formerly CIA. Quote, Lou, you know we already know what these things are, right? Have you read your Bible lately? You're opening a can of worms playing with this stuff. It's demonic. There is no reason we should be looking into this. We already know what they are and where they come from. They are deceivers, demons, end quote. Have you ever had a similar conversation with a senior official in regards to the UAP NHI topic? And moreover, do you have any reason to suspect that there exists evidentiary grounds for such a claim? Or, in your opinion, is it just as speculative as any other hypothesis? Thank you.
I would say it's just as speculative as any hypotheses, but my family is very religious. And the way I see it, this is not like some horror show where you're dealing with demons or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, if you're facing evil, you don't bury your head in the sand. You investigate it and figure out how to beat it. And that's where my mental headset comes from. So if someone comes to me and said, you're dealing with demons, my first thing would be, how do you know? Show me. Give me the proof. Because they're going to be just as stuck as we are. Well, my family told me something too. For every argument that someone has, it's all speculative. So we'll all have the counter argument. Unless someone's really in the program and looking at all this stuff and whatever, they're probably the only ones that can tell us. But based on what I know, this is just another life form. And just because one looks like an angel and one looks like, what is it? The Draconians are supposed to be like the lizard people, I guess. Just because they look a certain way doesn't mean that the Draconians are evil and the angel looking ones are whatever. And we have to do the investigation and figure it out. And I wouldn't heed any of the demonic stuff at all. I would say when in the Bible, I think all it references is that God made other creatures. I don't know if these are those other creatures. All I know is that if we don't investigate, we won't find out. We won't know. We'll be left in the dark. That's the best I got.
Thank you for that. I think Kirk has a comment to offer, and then we're going to kick a question over to James.
Oh,
yeah, Kirk, what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought I was maybe jumping ahead of James, but I'll just say that this, I think what Lou was referring to, if I'm not mistaken, in his book is that, there are reports that there was a kind of a group some suggested they were a very organized group of officers and of military personnel in the Department of Defense who had some, I think, it is alleged, a religious-based view of the UAP phenomenon, and they did not, they were alleged to be, devoted to suppressing any inquiries about this phenomenon on religious grounds. That these are, that these are satanic, demonic forces, and nobody should be paying any attention to it other than to fight it or something. So I really personally don't know whether this has a basis in reality, but it's been alleged, and Lou is reporting on one an encounter with someone that might reflect that.
Oh, that's a great comment. Thank you for weighing in. And I will now kick it over to James, who had a question.
Oh, thanks. This is directed to both Kirk and Logan, please. I have learned over the years that, everybody talks about the lack of more compelling data. And a lot of the insiders that I've met with clearly said, yeah, that data exists. It's 4K video, radar, and then they talk about, why it's not released. And I think it's one of the justifications commonly used is ways and methods, or methods and ways, or something. And I think to myself, well, sure, can't you just get rid of the rest of that data and just produce the image of the object itself? So what, in your opinion, Kirk and Logan, what are the real reasons why they're not revealing or releasing the more compelling data that's been collected internally?
I'll let you go, Kirk.
Well, Logan, you were the intelligence officer, but what people have said to us is, to kind of repeat James's characterization, is that they say, it's the platform and the sensor that took it, that you can derive characteristics of the sensor based upon the data that is released. And I don't understand the science of this, but I have heard this so often in the past, even in connection with non-UAP events, that there is some basis for this, but I frankly think that this is mostly based upon that they don't want this stuff to come out. I think they feel like it, if nothing else, that it breeds some, not hysteria, but, fascination and preoccupation on the part of the public for reasons that they think are unfounded. But, I also think that they try to keep this kind of thing from Congress, where it's not a classification issue. I think it's just that they don't want Congress to see this kind of stuff.
Okay. Giving this some thought, there are some technical reasons, sources and methods, I think is what you were trying to allude to, James.
Thank you. Yes.
There are some very valid reasons for that. Okay. And I believe there's reasons for keeping secrets and there's other reasons for not. But there is data that is there. I guess you could scrub it and everything, but I think some of the sources and methods might still be revealed if someone's smart enough. To the average person, no. To a trained person, oh yeah, definitely. And I would pretty much leave it at that. But again, This is why I'm saying the public needs to come together, because I don't think you need the government to get the answers. I think you need the public with the right tools. And taking those right tools and then handing them to someone like you, James, so that you can show it to the world and to the rest of your colleagues, show it to the world what is there. And I think that's the best way to go, because if you're, again, if you don't have a clearance, people can always hide behind that. Hey, you don't have a need to know whatever. You know, was that term physician heal thyself? Hey, let's take care of ourselves and we'll figure it out.
Thanks, you guys.
Kirk, did you have one more thing you wanted to add?
Very, very quickly, I certainly endorse and appreciate what Logan is saying. One of the challenges that we have is that who's gonna provide the instruments and the calibrated instruments that she'd really like to have recording a UAP. And part of the problem is that the stigma around this issue, frankly, really inhibits the scientific community. If we could get past that, I think there would be many more opportunities and people pursuing those opportunities to, get censored data, scientific censored data on these things. That's why, I think that the Soul Foundation and Abby Loeb's initiative, and I wish there were 1,000 of these. And I think that if it weren't for the stigma attached to this issue, we probably would have 1,000 of these trying to get data on this phenomenon. And boy, that would really be helpful in achieving what Logan is describing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We are getting very close once again, to the top of the hour. Time really is flying. I just had one final question for Logan. This, as this one, really the first time that you've stepped forward publicly in the program. And I'd love to just hear from you what inspired you to take that step and to come forward and to be involved in this project.
So I was at a conference, and I was I was with Jay Stratton, who was the task force commander, and he was talking, and a whole bunch of people just came to him and were asking him so many questions, and being the guy with the sense of humor that he has, he outed me. He pretty much he said, he goes, "Why are you asking me? Logan worked for me," and outed me. So everybody came to me, and then James and I started talking, and he just said, "Hey, what's your opinion on this?" And I was like, he said, "I just want to know, why do we do X, Y, Z? Why do we do it this way?" And I was like, those are good questions, legitimate questions that people should have asked and should know the answer to. So when James asked me to, and Leslie, I said, okay, why not? Let's give this a try and see if we can answer the right questions so people can put certain things into context. Because a lot of people assume they know how the government works. And unless you're in the government, you have no idea. Unless you're in intelligence, unless you're an operator in an aircraft or on the ground, you don't have any idea. There's certain things that we have to do in a certain way. And yeah, some of them may be questionable, but at the end of the day, we have to walk home and feel like we did something right at the end of the day. And so this was me in this thing we call life. This is me stepping forward and doing my part.
And you said that you were going to have to kill me afterwards, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You were.
Yet he was.
I have one thing that I want to add before we talk to James.
Yes, please.
And that one thing is this. it is my opinion, I don't have any official documentation or anything, that because of the stigma and the phenomena, we have provided a disservice to the people in the military and first responders. Because the moment they step forward, the ridicule and stuff that they are dealing with, they are having their own PTSD issues over this stuff. All right. First of all, they've got to deal with it internally. But what I'm trying to get across is that you don't know half the things that these guys have had to deal with before they've even gotten to you. And my niece's husband has a podcast where he's talking about healthcare, mental health care, and whatever. And I told him, one day you really need to do a show about PTSD and all the mental things that are going through, because we have a large variety of guys that, if it wasn't for the fact that they were in a group when they saw the activity or the phenomena, when they went to the VA or that military psychiatrist, that psychiatrist, psychologist, whoever, was trying to spend more time trying to convince them that they didn't see what they saw. And now they were creating a conflict in their mind. And then on top of that, if you're at the top of your game and everybody looks to you and says, yo, man, you're the best, whatever. The moment that they report that they have seen some type of phenomena, they lose credibility. And that causes a lot of internal problems. And all I'm asking is for the general public is to understand these guys are human. Don't be like the vultures picking every meat off the bone and then just leaving them hanging, because these guys, some of us have done fine, but others, whatever it was, could have been so dramatic and so traumatic that it has left them broken and they need help. And I have another shirt here that's about suicide, about military people dying every 22 seconds or whatever. But really, all I'm asking is, as a human being, as a veteran, as a person in the world, have a heart and help them instead of just picking at them. All right? Because they need help. And we have to be our brother's keeper. That's all I have.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being here with us today, Logan. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I know I speak for the whole community. Kirk and Logan, thank you so much for coming forward and for spending all this time with us today and being so generous with your time. We are headed into our final hour of the live stream. We are going to be speaking with James Fox up next. But first, we are going to check out the trailer for the program. So we'll watch that now.
2017, the New York Times published a story exposing a secret government program investigating UFOs.
That story was kind of a catalyst for a lot of things that have happened since. Members of Congress started to ask questions.
Instruments report there is something there.
There are flight characteristics that we can't explain.
UAPs are unexplained. It's true. They need to be investigated.
Here we are having a hearing where just a few years ago, we didn't even acknowledge that these things were real.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
You're telling me people have come forward claiming firsthand knowledge of craft of non-human origin?
That's correct. We have sources who have asserted not only that there have been crashes, but there have been crash retrievals.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they human or non-human?
Non-human.
I'm sitting here today because the American people are being lied to.
We are the American government, and we are open, and we're going to be open about this.
What has been revealed:
non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity.
Is only part of the story.
The pressure's on. The Pentagon, the CIA are going to have to answer the mail.
Some are risking everything.
Have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life?
Yes, personally.
To uncover the rest.
What is being done to verify the assertion that the U.S. government has spaceships of non-human intelligence in their possession?
That kind of revelation unearths people's beliefs.
I would go to jail to say things that I've been exposed to.
in the program.
Oh, wow. It just gives you chills. James, I know that so much work went into making this film. I'm sure that you must feel like you just finished a 100-mile super marathon with a 100-pound pack on your back. How are you feeling? How are you?
Well, it's funny, actually. I always say that I really feel like a piece of me dies every time I birth a new project. And I really feel that's kind of true. It takes me a while to feel human again. And yeah, I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm getting closer.
Oh, good. Well, I hope you get to take some time off over the holidays and just recoup once you get done with this marathon of PR that you've been on also. So, how was the process of making the program? How has that been maybe different from some of your other documentaries? Has it been different from your other documentaries? Like, did working with whistleblowers complicate things? Did it bring maybe unanticipated heat or anticipated heat? Like, how was it different from your other projects?
Yeah, for a number of reasons. I mean, one is, you're feeling pressure because everyone in the UFO community feel like things aren't happening fast enough. And as someone who's been investigating this, and I've got the films to prove it since I was in my 20s, we've had 3 congressional hearings in 3 years. That's a lot. We hadn't had one prior to that Andre Carson spearheaded for over 50 years. Not only that, but I'm suddenly in an arena where it's not just dealing with unknown objects in the sky, but potentially beings on the ground, crash recovery. I mean, this is like taboo topic, Roswell, aliens. I mean, that's a slippery slope, right? Contact. I mean, all these, close encounters of the third kind, very difficult, to prove. And I get it. Like the skeptics out there are going to have a field day with me, and I don't blame them. I get it. I really do. But I'm trying to take a level-headed approach and at least create what I consider is a very compelling body of data that something truly inexplicable seems to be going on, and that there's no smoke without fire. So, and I know that some of the things put forward in the film are going to be controversial. You can't delve into the phenomenon and not have an element of controversy, because I'm afraid that's just the nature of the beast. So, but I think we did a relatively good job, enough to where people should be raising an eyebrow, going, "What was going on here? Something's going on."
Absolutely. I think if anybody really took the time to sit down and watch all of your films, it's really hard to say, with all of the, your body of work. Like, there's clearly something's going on here, and you've been talking to people all over the world about it for decades. So thank you for all your hard work on that. What's the most surprising thing that you can share, that you learned while making this film?
Probably that firsthand people have been meeting behind closed doors, because David Grusch, as impressive as he is, and he's impressive, and he was doing his job when he went out to find out what the intel agencies really knew, drew back the curtain, found allegedly the program, but imagining that there are first-handers meeting closed door meetings on the Hill, kind of learning that, not only just learning it, but believing that that's really happening. That's a bit of a shocker.
So you mean specifically with their meeting with Congress people? Is that what you're saying?
Select members, I guess. Yeah. I can't really give any specific names,
Sure.
But I mean, I met with a number of people on the inside that are still, I don't know what their position is as of right now, but at the time we're still connected. And they were saying, yeah, it's, we're meeting with first-handers, or people that claim that they're first-hand witnesses. And that's just, to me, it's just, wow. I had to just wrap my mind around that. That's, it's exciting. It's a little scary, I guess. I'm concerned about, I want to make sure that there's the right legislation written to protect these individuals from coming forward. I really want them to feel, protected adequately. It sounds like we have a little ways to go. But yeah, that was probably it for me. Lots of the different things, but that kind of knowing that that's going on is wow.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely stunning. One of the voices that was also in the program that I wanted to find a small way to pull in as well was Hal Putoff. And I have a couple questions about that, but I think first we actually have a clip from the program, one more clip that features Hal Putoff. We want to watch that. I love that. Yeah. It's so great that you got him. Obviously, he's been involved in the government's investigation of various, unknown and anomalous phenomena dating back to the Stargate project. I will say that I found some of his comments a little bit sobering, although, he has ventured this before, I think, at the first Soul Foundation Symposium. But he indicated that there have been discussions about disclosure in the past, but that basically that it was decided that it wasn't a good idea or it wasn't a good time. Based on the insiders that you've spoken to, what do you think needs to be different this time for us to cross the finish line? Or would you say, disclosure has happened and now it's just a matter of time? Like, where do you land on all of that?
I'm looking on the wall behind me right now, and one of the acts that we decided to explore or include in the film is the politics of disclosure. I never really considered the complexities of it all and the potential impact that it would have on, let's say, organized religion, financial institutions. I don't know. For me, I used to always sort of think in the past, like, wow, it'd be so amazing to discover that we're not alone in the universe and have this big kumbaya moment and group hug and yay, it's so unifying to everybody. It'll be amazing. We'll finally see ourselves for who we really are as one race, one species, one planet. Isn't that great? But as I've gotten more into my investigations, I'm starting to believe that it's a far more complex issue than that, and that and I think that Hal puts it so beautifully. He was involved with looking at the different factors of what needs to happen prior to just disclosing, like having the president of the United States standing at the podium saying, "My fellow Americans, it has been brought to my attention that we," and so I think the trickling of this information out, because even for me, like when I investigated that alleged UFO crash in Varginha, Brazil, well, that was to think that there are possibly live aliens walking around the town that got captured and this UFO crashes. That's just, if that happened, of course, obviously I'm convinced after years of investigating that it did happen, but boy, that's tough to process, even for me, who's been in the field for a long time now. I get it. I can imagine Joe Public coming to terms with that. Like, it's so left field, they wouldn't even know how to process it. I remember one time I interviewed these group of hospice workers, and there were these 5 or 6 women in Phoenix, Arizona on March 13th, 1997, when that massive boomerang-shaped object floated over their house. And they said we were outside having tea discussing the ailments of one of their patients. And all of a sudden, this like city thing, it was the size of a city. They said it took 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, they just looked up, they could see the compartments, and it was so quiet, it just floated around over the top of them. And then they went right back to their tea and their conversations. And I said, you didn't run inside your house, call 911, get the camera, get the car, chase after it? No, we didn't. Really? And it kind of like, what I realized then was that sometimes it's almost too much to process. It's like Kirk saying when he came home with it to his wife, like trying to wrap his mind around, and sometimes I wonder about that. I've had the same experience. I've gotten back from trips to Brazil, just so gobsmacked by, I think I met a guy who drove an alien. I really do. I really believe that. How do I process that? How do I talk to my friends at a barbecue, going to my son's school events, and then I'm going to, without sounding like a complete crazy person. And I remember one or two times when I just started talking about my last trip to Brazil, and I was so excited and animated. I started talking, and I see the looks on all these people's faces. They looked at me like I needed to up the dosage of the medication that I wasn't on, or that it should have been on. And I realized, I was like, I can't talk about this. I'll just wait till the movie comes out, And so I get it. It's a far more complex issue than I ever imagined. This whole, whatever you want to call it. I hate to use the word disclosure on the baggage, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. I can't imagine how much your worldview has just been blown wide open with all the work that you've done these last few decades. What are you working on next? That might be a cruel question to ask, as you still need to go home and unplug and take.
Yeah. So
but what's up?
Yeah, going back to this other thing, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do next. Probably going back to Brazil next month. But when David Grusch was testifying in those open hearings, right? I watched it on my little phone. I was super busy. I just couldn't make it. I just couldn't get there. But I watched it on my phone. And it was one of the only times where I just completely told my son, who was probably 8 at the time, like he was trying to get me to go play with him outside. No. And I just put my hand up like, no, I'm not leaving this screen. I need to watch this live. And I sat there and I was watching it, and I had tears streaming down my face on both sides, because I was just like, finally, this is starting to come out. I'm feeling so much less crazy. I don't want to say justified, because I'm not trying to get people to join my cult of believers, because that's, but it's starting to come out, because I'm like, I knew this was happening because I discovered it in the field after 12 years. I investigated Roswell. I mean, I went to Roswell. I got to meet with at least 12 people that were involved in the cover-up at the time, because I got there for the 50th anniversary. So people in their 20s and 30s were in their 70s and 80s. They were still around, and I got to meet them all. And yes, they were talking about picking bones out of the desert. They said, not only will you be picking our bones out of the desert, but your family's bones. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, it was very exciting. And so in terms of my next project, I've been really kicking the idea around of doing an event things are happening so quickly right now. It's, you put a movie together. Even when I operated at warp speed to put the program together. I nearly killed myself in the process. I'm thinking about doing an event at the National Press Club. Leslie Kean had heard, I did it in 2007 with Leslie Kean, made a movie about it for the History Channel. And I'm thinking about doing that. So I put the feelers out a little bit, and I've talked to 5 or 6 people so far that seemed extremely interested to participate. And then I would document it and then edit that and put that out as soon as possible within months. And it would be a good media thing. So I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to revamp Moment of Contact, probably do an event at the National Press Club. Hopefully Leslie Kean will work with me on that, even though I haven't discussed it at length with her just yet. But
this is your notice, Leslie.
Exactly.
Well, just a few small projects then. Sounds like no big deal, right? You've got a lot on your plate. My goodness.
Now's not the time to let off.
You're right.
I've waited 30 years for this moment. I'm not slowing down right now. Hell no.
Well, we love to see it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Let us head over to get some questions from Redditors. I know they're very excited to ask you. So our first question comes from And Sanis Primero, I know I'm butchering some of these guys, I'm sorry, from Our Aliens. The question is, what do you know about the efforts to obtain the 35-second clip of the Virginia alien? Have you watched it? How can we as a community help to push or lobby for its release?
So great question. And I've had to sift through hundreds, maybe thousands of messages on both, emails, encrypted messages, YouTube videos from my parents on Joe Rogan when I talked about it. In fact, I just met a gentleman, Jonathan, from the Soul Foundation, who's designing some AI software that will enable to sift through tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of messages, because critical information can come in. And I have been doing that to the best of my ability in between making the program. And I had a number of leads, probably sifted it down to 11. But it's the kind of thing where I need to go back to Brazil and follow these leads up. And it's not going to happen. And, they're not doing it remotely. So I can remind the audience if, I just reported on the Calvine UFO case. I've been discreetly going after that photograph. Thank you, David Clark, by the way. I've been discreetly going after that photograph for over 20 years. So I don't just give up on things. I can assure you I'm doing the best I can to follow up the leads and super busy and trying to get back to Brazil to meet some of those individuals that claim to have it in person and see if we can figure it out.
Oh, very cool. Amazing. Let me actually kick it over to Logan, who has a question for you next.
First of all, you promised me that I would be the bag boy to go to Brazil with you, so don't forget that. There's two things I wanted to bring up. One, the Phoenix Lights. I found it kind of interesting that when all those people saw this thing go over, and all these people had their cameras and whatever, they took all this data. That's all good. But the media, it seems like the media didn't have anything. And the way I understand the media to work is that when there is something going on, especially something like this that took over the whole valley, they would be on the scanners, listening in, whatever. But when it came time for people to present what they found, it was all the public. The media showed nothing. Have you ever looked into that to see if there was something else going on behind that? Because all the media ended up doing after all that activity is just ridiculing the congresswoman that tried to find out what was going on.
Yeah, so great point. And I remember the frustration, particularly when a couple months after the incident, the then governor, Five Simonton, rolled out one of his aides dressed in an alien suit and just, made light of the whole. I was in touch with many firsthand witnesses that were absolutely furious at that move. And unfortunately, the one councilwoman, Frances Barwood, who did put her neck out, and all she said at the time was, hey, let's launch an investigation. Let's figure out what people are claiming to have seen. She's not saying, hey, aliens have landed. That's all she was asking for. And she was lampooned in the media. They just tore her to bits. It was very, very unfortunate, and I don't think that she felt that Governor Five Simonton had her back at the time either. I know that he, I met with Five Simonton roughly almost 10 years later. And one of the ways I really feel that I got him to crack was that I've told the story once or twice, but it's really kind of funny actually, because I contacted one of his former constituents and a witness to the event, this woman, Stacy Rhodes. And I said, Stacy, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe who I'm going to meet with right now. And she goes, who? I said, Five Simonton, the former governor. Is there anything you'd like to say to him? She goes, you're damn right I would, like that. And it had been almost 10 years and she was still living. So I said, well, hold on a second. Let me get my tape recorder. So I pull the car over to the side of the road. I was driving down from Northern California to Santa Barbara to meet with him. And I hit the record button on my little tape and I put the phone on speaker and I recorded a statement from her. But I figured that I would ambush the former governor, but I'd wait until I got as much of the interview as I could get because it might piss him off and he might kick me out. So I got about, I don't know, at least an hour into the interview. And I said, hey, I've got something to play for you. It's actually one of your former constituents and also a witness to the event. And if you don't mind, I'd like to play it. And he kind of got a little uncomfortable in his chair for a moment. And I hit the play button and woof, she let loose. You basically ridiculed all of us. We supported you. We voted for you. And you went out and made a mockery of us. How could you do such a thing? And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he said, boy, it's been a while since I've been ambushed. You know, he had a good sense of humor about it. But I saw him kind of take a moment, process. And I think he just made a decision. Screw it. Hey, you know what? I saw that thing too. And I checked with the Luke Air Force Base and the Pentagon, and they also, he said, I knew it wasn't from here. I said, how'd you know that? He said, the sheer volume. Now, this is like very few times in my entire career where I was literally reached down and I pinched myself to feel that I wasn't really dreaming. I know this sounds crazy, but I really did. I pinched myself because I thought this isn't happening. And I've been investigating this case for 10 years, and now I'm getting the former governor of Arizona to admit for the first time on camera that he saw it, he investigated it. Whoa, this is going to be a big story. But I thought I was dreaming. So I reached down and I was pinching my leg during the interview to see if I could feel pain. And then I was like, yeah, I can feel it. Yeah, I'm definitely not dreaming. I'm serious. I'm not making this up. I really was. So then I looked at the camera and I thought the camera's probably not recording. So I was looking to see if the camera had the red light when we were recording the tape. And that was a big moment. So, but in any case, yeah, that ridicule was real. And he ultimately said he did it because he felt that there was almost a panic. Like people, like he wanted to add a moment of levity and panic. I don't know. Maybe he got a phone call saying, you know, kill this story. Who knows? But that's what he told me. That's what to this day he maintains, that he did it because he wanted to like calm the public, calm everybody down because it was getting pretty insane.
Yeah. I have one more question for you, and this is dealing with NASA, because you were there for the NASA broadcast or meeting, whatever.
That's when Bill Nelson said that there was a body in a box in a warehouse. Where was that warehouse? That box was somewhere.
So I'm gonna say something. When the NASA probe was announced, everybody was all excited because they're like, NASA's got to be in there and whatever, and it started to proceed. And then someone on there made the recommendation that we need an app, something that we can use to capture all of this wonderful information. My phone, my email started blowing up like crazy. Logan, you got to get over to NASA. You got to give him, you got to do something. Just do something. Get it over there ASAP. So I'm trying everything. And I have some friends that knew some people at NASA. So they try to work with me. And they came back and was like, they're not interested. And I was like, what? But everybody's been telling me that this is what they want. I've got something. I know there's others out there. What can we do? And they're like, it's not the right time. But based on your opinion, when you sat in on that meeting, what were you feeling? And where do you think NASA's really going to go with this? Because it seems to me like they're the outward pointing people about space and everything. And then, in my opinion, I felt like it was such a big letdown, not only because they didn't even engage me on the app and say, well, Mr. Logan, we'd like to entertain talking to you later about this, whatever. It was pretty much the Heisman. But for you were actually there, and you stood up there and said, hey, and you asked your questions, And I don't think you got the answers. I feel like you just got to run around, and I feel like the general public pretty much felt the same way. It was like a big letdown. But I wanted to know, what were you feeling, and where do you think this is going to go?
I was extremely optimistic initially, and the reason why is some of the statements that Bill Nelson had made, certainly maybe it was before he was head of NASA, I'm not entirely sure, but some of the public statements, some of the reports he was making, or statements he was making on the news were very encouraging to me. And I thought, wow, this guy's really pushing for transparency and get down to figure out what's really happening. I was quite impressed. When I came to the UAP hearing, and one of the things he said that I thought, okay, this is when he said the phenomenon was real. I thought, okay, well, that's a step in the right direction. Cool. But then making any kind of statements as if, like, we don't know what it is, but it's not extraterrestrial. I was like, well, okay, well, I know you don't have to say it's extraterrestrial, but if you don't know what it is, how can you say what it isn't? So I thought that was a little odd, but okay, well, get a little further. Then the David Grusch thing came up, and I thought, hey, look, you got a super high level intel guy who testified to a bipartisan group of lawmakers under oath, okay, that, this crash retrieval program, yada, yada, yada exists. And, I think the appropriate response when asked about it considering that NASA was in the midst of investigating UAP in an official capacity with taxpayer money, trying to get to the bottom of what they know or what they don't know, that the appropriate answer would have been, we're in the midst ourselves of an investigation. We take allegations and claims like this seriously. We're in the process of vetting down this individual and following up on some of his some of his claims, and we'll report back at a later date. But that's not what he did. What he did was, in my opinion, was a hatchet job. So he basically started talking about stuff that didn't align. That was so inaccurate that I thought it had to be intentional. And I was really frustrated at the time, very frustrated. And I remember saying, just calm down, James. Revenge is a platter best served cold. Let me get this done in the edit room. So I thought very meticulously, and I worked extra hard to even do split screen edits where I had statements from what he was saying about Grusch and then what Grusch was actually saying under. And I had a lot of fun with that in the edit room. But yeah, that was a big disappointment, no question.
Okay, that's all I have.
Well, thank you for those questions. We will head back and do another Redditor question. This one comes from Vardonius in Our Experiencers. I have a question for James Fox. Do you feel the need to resist the woo in the name of objectivity and documenting the phenomena to raise the public's awareness? Or are there aspects of it that you enjoy or have made a part of your life? I'm a huge fan.
That's a really good question, and if you look at the progression of my work, when I started off in the mid-90s, I think it took me the better part of 20 years before I even reported on, alleged close encounters of the third kind, because let's face it, that's a slippery slope. There's no question about it. You're going to make these claims that there's face-to-face contact. You don't really have a lot of evidence in the sense of power and numbers. I mean, case in point, Rua, Zimbabwe. I reported on close encounters of the third kind, I would say, for the first time after at least 20 years, possibly longer. I felt like there were enough eyewitness testimony from the school, Rua, Zimbabwe, 1994, coupled with them as adults. Okay, this needs to be looked into. And I covered a couple of other cases, but that was pushing the envelope for me, particularly the fact that we had, Senator Harry Reid participating in that film, and he wanted to approve it, in particular his appearance, before the film was to be released. And I was terrified that he was going to take one look at it and go, "You reporting on a landing at a school with a UFO and the aliens get out and have telepathic communication with the school children? Like, take me out of that movie, please." I was like, oh God, this is going to be. So I pushed the envelope a little bit. Okay. And then when I did Moment of Contact, again, about an alleged crash in Varginha, Brazil, the Americans involved, I pushed the envelope again. I mean, let's face it, it's I was making some pretty tall tales. I wasn't personally making. The witnesses were coming forward and describing what they claimed to have seen. But still, it's like I had friends that know and respect my work tremendously, and they contacted me and said, James, you had me with the phenomenon and out of the blue, and I know what I saw, but you've lost me on Moment of Contact. I'm sorry, buddy. That's just a bridge too far. And I said, hey, I get it. But before you just categorically dismiss it, could you promise me one thing? Promise me that you'll at least take a look at some of the testimony, and then you can dismiss it. And because I stand by it, right? Well, now I'm doing this new film, the program, and I report on something that's very controversial, and I'm going to get criticism, and I get that. I believed I did as much due diligence as I possibly could on this individual's background, and the other names of potential people involved, and the fact that it took place and they were on duty, and we have a location and we have a date, time, roughly. And I opted to report on it because I figured, look, if I report on it and more people, it'll hopefully encourage more people to come forward and either say, yeah, I was there, it happened, or that's not exactly how I remember it happening. But again, I understand. I pushed the envelope a little bit with each film, and I'm getting into some sort of for me uncharted territory with some of this stuff, and I don't blame people out there to criticize me, but understand where it's coming from.
That's a great answer. Thank you. We will go to our next Redditor question. This one comes from Under the Current 7 in Our High Strangeness. Thank you, James Fox. What is the biggest piece of evidence that changed your view or made you really want to continue the incredible work you do?
Boy, that's a good question. I mean, it's in different stages. I would say one of the most profound moments for me was when and again, I'm not going to sit there and prove why I believe what I believe, but probably when I sat down with Military X in Brazil and what I knew it took to get him to sit down with us, the years and years it took for our team, Marco Leal, thank you for that, that I'm looking into the eyes of a gentleman that I really believe drove an alien. And that was pretty intense. Because
I can't imagine.
Well, yeah, the audience. Well, I know, and I talked to him with the cameras not rolling, and I'm looking at him in the eyes, and met with him, and we had located him because he'd given an on-camera statement right after the incident had happened, as a sort of insurance policy that anything happened to him and his other people that were involved, those tapes would be released, and they are all across Brazil with various researchers. So I knew about the tape and I knew about the interview. I'd seen it. And so we, when we found this individual and the individual said, there's not all the money in the world, is never going to get me to come forward. And then eventually we got him to give an anonymous, statement. That was pretty intense. You imagine, like, suspend judgment. You don't have to believe that it happened or it didn't happen. But if it did, and you're looking into the eyes of someone who drove an alien around, I mean, and then having to shoulder that burden for 26 years and what that would do, what that does to you, and pretty intense.
It is. I mean, just what you were talking about in terms of how just doing the work that you do kind of makes you live in two different worlds. And I can't imagine what it's like for somebody who's come face to face with something like that.
It's definitely impactful. And I've told people I could probably take a couple of people and I could take you to the doctor that worked on the guy who died. I can take you to the family members. I can take you to probably introduce you to the gentleman, Military X.
Well, let's go.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it on a huge scale, but I took a handful of select journalists with me to prove, believe me, it's a very different story when you're in Brazil meeting with these people, I can assure you. Then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, gosh, that's amazing. Incredible. And excited for you to update that story. We'll do one more. We'll get to go to another Redditor question. This one comes from Mr. Decay in our UFOB. What are your thoughts on the supposedly leaked MH370 videos showing 3 orbs flying around the plane? Does this seem legitimate? Is it in line with the MO and capabilities of NHI?
So what I have seen did not impress me at all. I did share that with a few people that I knew, and they were like, this is not what it looks like if we really captured. So in my humble opinion, I think that's a fake. That's to me, and some people could be upset with me for taking that position, but that's what I believe.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting us know your opinion. Absolutely. Yeah. I know that's one that lots of opinions out there. That's up there with the Nazca mummies and the ones I get yelled at about the most.
I know people
from
can
both
criticize
sides.
me. I get it, and sometimes I'm wrong. In fact, I can. I'm fallible. Believe me, very fallible.
Absolutely, I hear that. All right, we will head to our next Redditor question. This one comes from Project Magnet from our UFOs. Hey, James, greetings from Canada. Thanks for all the work you've done shining light on this subject. I've been hooked since Out of the Blue. I was hoping to get your thoughts on the divide between the attitudes of US and Canadian officials re the UFO subject. Canada's military/government seems pretty dug in their position that they don't see any of this as a threat or military concern. Whereas in the US, we're seeing a lot of intelligence officials, politicians, and military folks emphasizing their belief that there is a clear threat. Given the Canada-US partnership with NORAD since the Cold War and information sharing via the Five Eye Alliance, etc., I was wondering what your take might be on why Canada seems to have taken such a different stance on this issue.
That's a good question. No, I would have to say that maybe Logan could answer that better than I could. But there was a gentleman that just recently passed, and I don't know what he learned in an official capacity, but it was Paul Hellyer. He was the only Canadian official that I personally am aware of that did speak out openly about this. But I'm not sure if it was stuff that he was officially involved with, or if it was he held high positions within the Canadian government and then learned of the UAP phenomenon after his position. I'm not entirely sure on that one. But Logan, do you have an answer for that one, or you'd be way more better qualified than I would be?
Not really. I just figured it's just the way the governments are run that he felt strong enough about the situation to step forward, kind of like the Israeli guy that stepped forward and said, there's stuff out there. I think we have had more of a stigma, and now everybody's trying to push back and say, no, there's something really out there. And I just think that even though there was a gentleman that showed up at Seoul the first year from Canada that said he was going to look into all this stuff and was going to do some things, I just think it's just taking them a while to come around. I think if the U.S. fully blows up, I think Canada's going to be right in there with us and saying, okay, yeah, we need to support this. And I will say that for the app, I've had about 3 different organizations call me from Canada to say, hey, how can we help? And I'm like, just give me a second, because I'm still trying to figure out a lot of this myself. So I just want to reiterate, I think it's just the government. There's people stuck in their ways, and this is the way it is. And I think now, but slowly, there's a realization that there is something there. And if they're going to be in an alliance with the U.S., they got to start accepting some of this stuff. And I think you're going to see a change.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that insight. We will go to our next Redditor question. This one comes from Adhesiveness OK 5194 in our aliens. Based on what you see about these phenomena, what do you think is the foreseeable future of disclosure in America? Are things coming to a head that will result in a changing of the guard? Or do you think these beings are largely uninterested in interfering with world happenings beyond allegedly preventing us from destroying the planet altogether?
Well, I've come to this conclusion organically because, and I've talked about it over the decades. I'm thinking to myself, well, these things, these objects, UAP, have done some pretty brazen things. I mean, they hovered over O'Hare Airport, that disc that hovered over O'Hare, what was that, 2005? Broad daylight, punched a hole in the cloud as it departed, seen by a number of United Airlines, personnel, pretty bold. I look at the case in Phoenix, we were just talking about a little while ago, that massive flyover from across the state. at a time when a lot of people were outside under the night sky trying to get a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet. A pretty brazen act. But if they really wanted to reveal their identity or their presence unequivocally, all they'd have to do is hover over the Macy's Day Parade or the next Super Bowl, and it's game over. But they don't do that. So that I look at what they do, and I also look at what they don't do. And so there's a side of me that believes that they, again, whoever they are also in on the secret, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I don't know. And I feel like I have more questions now than I did when I started 30 years ago. So I figure out what the hell's going on. And now I'm like, I really don't know what's going on. I just get dumber and dumber with the years go by.
Oh man, isn't that the way it works with this? That's crazy. Yeah. Well, I'm going to kick it over to Logan real quick, who has a question for you.
I've actually got two questions real quick, just real quick. At some point, I think there was a deliberate effort to reach out to a lot of school kids, kind of like the kids in Zimbabwe, the stuff in England, the stuff in Australia, variety of stuff here in the US. And so when you say that, I think maybe there was some kind of an attempt or something, or maybe they're waiting until we all grow old like now. We're all in our, 40s, 50s or whatever. And maybe they've kind of laid that ground road for us to start pushing back on the government to say, hey, something's actually happened here. But the question I really wanted to ask you was, can you explain to everybody why this particular, the movie, the program, took so long to come out? Because I was waiting to see Kirk's star on the Hollywood Boulevard, and I didn't see that. So, what took so long?
So we had a number of issues with distribution companies. I had a catastrophic failure with my previous distribution company. It was very, very bad. And then we kind of got aligned with another company, and then that one tanked. It just didn't happen, unfortunately. And then we came to the realization that we're going to have to do this on our own. And I remind your audience, like, just because a film is done, it doesn't mean you can just immediately release it. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen. There's metadata to realize. There's quality control issues. There's the trailer you got to make. You got to get in the queue for the various platforms. That takes 3 months minimum, right? Again, trailer, metadata, cover art, all these things go into a film's release, and they don't happen overnight. It takes time and resources. And we also had some other issues. We had to go back to the drawing board and additional follow-up interviews. Like, for instance, Kirk decided to come forward. Thank you, Logan, for helping orchestrate that. So that meant that we had to go back to the sound design individual. Like, when the film's done, he does all the sound work, and then he spits out all the various stems, and then that has to be put together for the deliverables. It just takes time and resources, and that's one of the reasons why it took as long as it did. Like, let's say that Netflix wanted to buy it, right? One of the things that a lot of the people that we were entertaining, making sales to, was that if you want to sit on this film and release it in the spring of 2025, that's a non-starter. Like, this film's coming out this year, and I think that put pressure. That was additional pressure on some of these individuals with various platforms. So again, we went full independent. We got in the queue, and then made it in time for the fourth quarter release.
Amazing. Did you have another question, Logan, or was that?
That was pretty much it. I just wanted to make sure that people understood why, because I had heard some stuff, and people were questioning, why did he take so long? And everybody's got an opinion, and I figured best thing to do is hear it from the director himself as to what's going on.
Yeah, and we also had to once we realized that we were going to release this film entirely independently, which I'd never done before. We had to raise additional capital a significant amount of additional capital so we can hire the PR firms and get this social media sites and run. It's a big operation. It's a lot. It's a lot. One thing I wouldn't mind mentioning for those of you interested in getting seeing the program, it's for sale only right now, which is it's expensive. It's $20, and I get it. So if you can afford to support the movement and you like what we do, get it. If not, wait till the end of the month, and we'll have it available rental. And also, I know there's been some issues with people abroad. We're ironing the kinks out regarding making it available on various platforms around the world. It's an ongoing thing. There's people working diligently behind the scenes to make all that happen. So please, if you're abroad and you're having frustrations, be patient. It's coming.
Oh, that's great. I know there's a ton of people waiting for that, so that's exciting. Let's go to another Redditor question. So this one is from a murmuration and in our experiencers. And this question is actually to all of you, and especially to anyone who has children. Based on everything you know now, how are you raising your children differently? Or how would you change the way you prepare the younger generations for what's to come? Anybody want to go first?
Logan or Kirk?
My son is older now, so he's kind of figured out what dad's interested in. And I wouldn't change the way I raised him or anything like that, because now he's more inquisitive about the world. And he's even sending me stuff on UAPs. I was like totally surprised. He's like, "Hey, Dad, have you seen this? Hey, what about this? And why does this work this way?" And so he's asking a lot of those. He's asking the regular questions, and he's kind of looking into what else is there. It's no longer ask the question, the teacher gives an answer, and he's kind of like looking for the rest of the story. And I'm happy with the way things have turned out, and I hope he continues to progress in that manner.
Awesome.
Well, I will say I have 3 grown kids, or pretty grown, and it doesn't seem to really phase them. It's like, yeah, okay, Dad, and they're just going on with their lives, and I think they are more worried about where the country's headed, in any number of respects than they are about aliens. But I also know that, we heard a story about one of the sources that Dave Grusch, I think, has interviewed, or his team interviewed, who indicated that it just blew his mind about, he had 2 daughters or whatever, and how is he going to bring them up in this world, where non-human intelligence actually exists and comes here. So it's it's a very personal question, and I don't yet have a formed view on how I or anyone else should think about this, but it certainly is going to alter the trajectory of our society and our planet. Just don't know how.
My son says that all of his other fellow students, because I was worried, like, I hope people don't make fun of you because your dad investigates the crazy, and he says, no, the kids think it's really cool. So I thought that was kind of funny. And sometimes my son will kind of speculate with me, like, Dad, I've been thinking about it. I think that, maybe some of them could be time travelers, and maybe they've figured out a way. And I'm thinking, wow, I can't believe he's thinking about this, in a very matter of fact way. It's really sweet. It's like it's like, they've accepted the fact that the phenomenon is real, and just speculation as to what's behind it.
100%.
Right.
Well, thank you all for sharing that. I really loved that question. I loved your answers. This really is changing the world that we live in, and it's really exciting to see how that's going to progress over time. We have just a few moments left. We're coming up to the top of the hour. I cannot believe how fast this has flown. I wanted to give all three of our guests an opportunity to offer any final thoughts, if you have any, for the Reddit community, everybody in the live stream. Kirk, do you want to start with you?
Well, to everyone out there, lean in. If you are concerned about this issue and you want to see progress made on it, make your voices heard with your representatives and senators. Keep following this, and there may be reason for people to call on you to weigh in on legislation or whistleblower issues or whatever, and try to be active. That's all I would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Logan, how about you? Do you have any final thoughts?
Yes. By the way, before anybody forgets, don't forget that Kelly has something coming out too. So make sure you know about that, or remember about it. My big thing is participate. My push is we got to educate ourselves on the situation. Go way back when, up to current date. We have to get more exposure to what is going on so that we can have really informed conversations about what it is we're seeing, and for others, what it is that we are actually experiencing. And then, so education, exposure, and then start participating. Use those apps, use those tools that are out there to get experience, so that when something does happen, like if you're going to use an app, don't go into the digital zoom. You keep it on the optical. If you're going to see something, lean up against a post so your hand stops shaking and whatever, so that we can get the best data possible. It's all, from my point of view, it's all about the collection of the data and making sure that it gets analyzed properly so we can get the information to the right people. So that's what I would push. And, try and have a healthy discussion about it, because regardless of if you want it or not, it's coming.
Amazing. And for anybody who wants to support Logan and his work, he does have a GoFundMe. I think we can put that up on the screen. Yep, there it is. So make sure you check that out. Download Phenom on your phone, and you continue to support all the amazing work that Logan's doing. All right. And James, you are up. What are your final thoughts?
Oh, my final thoughts are, this is a real grassroots effort that's taking place. I want to thank each and every one of you who, particularly Andrea, who spearheaded this whole idea at the Soul Foundation, came up to me. Yeah, really want to thank her, and I want to thank the Reddit communities for helping put this together, and all the work and time you put into making this happen. I really appreciate it. I know that the rest of us do. So thank you right there. And I don't think that it can be, the significance of contacting your representative can be overstated. I think it's really important that they hear from their constituents, that we support their efforts to keep holding the intel community's feet to the fire and find out like what they really know and when they knew it, and all of these things. What is it going to take to get the right legislation written that provides the potential whistleblowers with a level of comfort coming forward? So these are all things that are very important. And again, I think that it's the grassroots nature of what's happening is amazing. And I want to thank you guys all for helping make that happen.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, honestly, to Andrea, to all of the Reddit mods. You know, there's literally been like 25 people working in the background, working very hard to make something like this look easy. It takes a ton of coordination. I've been really impressed with that team, and everything that we've been talking about today about the need for collaboration and for all people from all walks of life, not just in the government, to be looking at this. I really want to thank the Reddit mods for leading from the front on that and showing what's possible when people come together to collaborate. I think it's really inspiring. Let's see, what else do we have? We are headed into the holiday season. And so obviously you're going to be seeing tons of family and friends. This is way more fun to talk about than politics. So, where you're able to start those conversations. And if people are showing interest, you can point them towards the program. Make sure that you check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It's phenomenal. I want to say thank you to all three of our guests, to Kirk and to Logan and to James. Thank you for being so incredibly generous with your time, both today, spending 3 whole hours with us. I know, you're very, very busy people with important jobs. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you do. And to James Fox in particular, thank you for your work. And, you've been a trailblazer in this field, and I just don't think we can thank you enough. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really greatly appreciate it.
Yep. All right. And thank you to everybody in the live stream. It's been so great to see everybody. I mean, we have had at points up to over 1,800 people watching this live, and I'm sure thousands and thousands more will watch as the day goes on. So thank you to everyone. And I hope everyone has a peaceful and joyful holiday season. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.